guys.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going? Good to see you. Yeah, good to see you.
Good job.
Hey, how you doing? This is everywhere, right, Seth?
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, hello, welcome. Today, thanks for stopping in and listening to our presentation. Today we'll be talking about our final project that we did while in the MindTech training. We did this about the last 3 weeks. We created a shopping cart web application. That was a project. I'm Nick Bakanovich.
Gabriel Gottfredson.
I'm Kevin Mancusi.
And today we'll be talking to you about Congo Exports. So first off, just an idea of what we'll be going through today. First thing we'll do is give you an idea of what we wanted to do with the application when we first started. Next we'll run through a demo of how our application works. And then finally we'll go over some of the design patterns and overall high-level architecture that we use when making this.
All right, as we are in the state of Wisconsin, they're very, very proud of their craft beer business. We decided our product would be beer on our website. And our website is designed for both customers to go on and purchase products and also vendors that can go and post products for the customers to purchase.
And as Congo Exports, our mission statement is to be the dedicated one-stop shop for any beer enthusiast and centralized online presence for new and long-standing beer vendors everywhere. At a high level, what we do is for our clients, we assist customers for looking for new beers to purchase, as well as give them the option to purchase their old favorite standbys. And if they are a vendor, we look to help establish a new online presence or strengthen an existing one. Here are the use cases.
So one thing we wanted to do is anybody who logged into our website, or who entered our website, not logged into an account, they should be able to view the full list of beer catalogs that we have. Can also see some basic information about the website. But we also wanted them, a customer, to be able to create an account, as well as to log into an existing account. And then once created an account or logged in, they can add items to a shopping cart, edit the shopping cart details, and then finally purchase the items in the shopping cart.
And a vendor, when they get to the website, should be able to also either log into an existing account they have already created or create a new account. Once they are logged into that account, they will be able to either add new products to their account or edit product details if, say, they're trying to have a sale and would like to lower the price on some of their products, they can jump in and do that.
And our last use case is for the administrator, which is a special case. As you can see from the flowchart diagram, they only have the option to log in. This would be based off of a user that we create for our own use to monitor the website. Also, once the administrator logs in, they have the ability to view reports, as well as take a look at the customers, products, vendors, and invoices, and make edit or delete options based on that.
So next we'll go through a demo, just kind of show you some of the different use cases we had. I'll walk you through the customer, Gabe will walk you through the vendor, and then Kevin will show you the administrative view. So here's what you'll see when you first log into the website.
Yeah, first thing you'll see is just a list of some of our products here. It'll scroll through, as you'll notice. Currently some of the most recently added products. We'll also have some top sellers. There will be featured product. The featured product is something that we figured we could do like advertisement with. If a company wants one of their products to be featured on the main website, they pay to have that done. You'll also notice a few tabs across the top. We have a home tab, it's just a little welcome message. We also have an about us, mission statement, and contact us. Kevin, if you want to fill that contact us form out. The contact us is just if a customer needs to get a little support from us, or has a nice message to leave us about how great we're doing, anything like that. We currently have it set up using once they hit send, it'll send out a JMS message beam to a queue we have set up, so we can get a hold of that later. Another thing you might notice is that our navigation here is kind of on the top. Normally that would be on the left side as a left nav bar, but since we are using Bootstrap, the responsive design that it's using the projector is kind of stuck at a lower resolution right now, so it automatically reconfigures those components and makes it accessible still anyway.
And then on all our pages we have a header that's going to be the same, as well as a footer that's going to be the same. Usually the left nav would be on the side with the main being in the middle, but because of the Bootstrap, the resolution we have the navigation on top here. So first thing we wanted them to be able to do is when they enter the website, just to be able to look at the full beer catalog to see what kind of items we have, what we sell. So if Kevin wants to click on that. So the first thing I want to point out about this is our table that we have here. So a couple different features. Currently, it's being sorted alphabetically by first name for the beer. But let's say if they wanted to search for a product that starts with Z, they can click on the sort button there. It'll do the opposite. It'll do start from Z and go from there. They can also search, switch the types, as well as description, sort by price if they're looking for a cheap beer, something like that. Another feature of this table would be the search. You type in, say, IPA if you're looking for an IPA. We'll see what comes up. We got a couple different options. You can also search, the different descriptions, the names, even a price, I guess, if you're looking for that. So the first thing I think we're going to do is go into the login create in the top of the header and log in as a customer. We'll select for this one. So this will take you to the login screen. From here you have two tabs. One of them says login, where you log in if you have an existing account, and the other one's going to be create an account. Create an account just has you enter a username, password, and confirm the password to see if the username is unique and it can create. It will take you through on the vendor creating a new account, but for me, we'll log into an existing customer account. Also something to mention about the inputs here is that if you were to type in an incorrect username or password, which Kevin will show you here, and try to log in, it'll check the database to see if the username or password are valid. If they're not, you'll get this message. You'll have to try again. So now we'll log in with the correct username and password here. And that will take us back to the home page. So also one thing I'd like to mention, if you look at the top header, this changes now. Before it just said log in, now we have added a shopping cart icon, as well as a profile, or it says Gabe there, and a logout. If you were to click the top profile Gabe, this is where you'd be able to edit your account. Changing any kind of information. Let's say we want to use Gabe's full first name, type in Gabriel. And also you can see it autofills the information based on what you put in earlier. Up to submit the info. You can see the Gabriel change to the top, so it accepted that update. So we've got some items here. We also now have an add to cart add to cart button that appears. So we'll go to the full beer catalog and add some items to our shopping cart. Let's go ahead and add Angry Orchard to our shopping cart. You can scroll through, see some of the different beer selections. Anybody see a beer they'd like to add to the cart?
Schlitz.
Schlitz, yeah, adding Schlitz to the cart. Schlitz and Blast, okay. Some high-end beers we're going with today. So we'll add about 3 items to our cart, and then go check out our shopping cart button at the top of the header. As you can see, every time it says if the item was successfully added. Also, before we move on, if we tried to add an item that was currently already in our cart, we click on Angry Orchard to try to add it again. It'll check to see if it's in our cart. It already was, and we'll give this alert. So we'll go up to the shopping cart at the top. So this is our shopping cart. Looks like the items were saved correctly. Here you can also remove an item from a cart. If we decided we didn't want any blots by the time we got to checkout, we can go ahead and remove that from our cart. Sorry, blots. And go ahead and close that. So now if the items looks good, this is a good shopping cart, we'll go ahead and proceed to checkout. This is our proceed to checkout page. Here you can change the quantity if you want multiple, so we can put in 2. Also, if you're to put in an errant input like letters or something, spell out 5. We do have input validation for this. Also, you can see it does some dynamic math in the page. It'll total what you have there, as well as give you the total amount at the bottom. Okay, we'll go ahead, and also it saves the current information that you entered previously. You can change it if you'd like to. We'll go ahead also and try to order 6 Angry Orchards, we'll say. Press the up. So because we only had, on the previous page it said there was a 5 available for the quantity, we only let them purchase 5, so we'll purchase all 5 and max out the quantity there. Purchase maybe 2 Bud Lights. We're having a party. And then for the credit card number, we also have some input validation. You can only input numbers, and you have to put 16 of them. So if Kevin were to try to put in some letters here, it won't work. So if everything looks good, we'll go ahead and submit the order. Our order has been placed. If we go up into our shopping cart now, we'll see we empty the shopping cart because the order was submitted. If you go once back to the full beer catalog, you will also see that the Angry Orchard, the out of stock and add to cart is now grayed out because we have no more quantity left for other customers. Now Gabe will take you through a vendor.
All right, go ahead and log into a vendor here. Nick already took us through logging in, so we'll go ahead and create an account. It's a very similar process between both customers and vendors. So we'll go with Riley's, we said. Now when we tap down into the password field, you'll notice it'll give us kind of a hint on what's necessary for your password. It has to be between 8 and 20 characters, lowercase, uppercase, number, and a symbol. So as you type, those will disappear as soon as you satisfy each requirement. So go ahead and type in the password, and then I also notice this says the passwords don't match. As soon as they do match, it'll let you know, and if they don't match, it won't let you continue. So go ahead and log in. Or not log in, sorry, continue creating an account. Now I go ahead and type in the rest of the company's information. Much like the checkout process, the phone number is the same way, where we have it masked, where you can only input a 10-digit phone number. Have a little welcome to anybody that joins the website, both vendors and customers alike. Go ahead and click Let's Do This, and notice up on top of the header here, we no longer have a shopping cart, now we have an ad product. The Riley's thing will do the same thing as the customer. You'll be able to go in and edit information if you like. But we'll go ahead and actually click on our beer catalog first. This will show us currently just what we have as a vendor available on the website. If we click on Add Product now, we'll go ahead and add something. Let's go ahead and add a Michelob Ultra. For this one, we also are able to upload a picture. For this one, we'll go ahead and skip that and just create a product. So we successfully added that product. As you notice, it does have a default picture we have set if they decide not to upload one. We'll go ahead and add one more product real quick. Go with Moon Man. And for this one, we will go ahead and actually upload a picture. So we'll choose one here. There we go. Just happen to have a Moon Man picture. Go ahead and create the product. And there we are, it's successful. At any time, the vendor could go in and edit a product if they wish, like I said. So if we go into Moon Man, we can change the price down to like $7.99 if they're on sale this week. We can also go ahead and delete one if you want to delete the Mick Ultra there. Perfect. And we'll go ahead and log out of this, and Kevin, will you walk through the admin?
Yeah. Much like the customer and the vendor, the admin will have a login based up here, as they're by themselves. And to reiterate from the use case, notice they only have a login tab. There is no create ability. And like we said earlier, that is because the admin is a special use case, and it is one that we create first in the database, and it's for our company use. So we will log in now as the admin. And you will notice that it has a very different look than what the customer or the vendor will see. The very first thing the admin sees on their homepage is the reports. In this case, we are looking at the top customers. This is a stored procedure from SQL, and in this particular case, it goes off of the number of invoices from a particular customer and purchases that they have made. So as you see here, we can see the number of we can see the people who have spent the most amount of money, and Gabe, you have spent quite a bit. Also, we'll move on to the next report, which is the vendor products. And this is a high-level view of all the vendors that currently have an account with Congo Exports, as well as showing what products they have, when they put them online, and the inventory. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll also see the number of unique products and the total inventory of everything that's available. If you scroll back up, your last report is the invoices being processed, and this refers to every invoice that has been submitted thus far. As you can see, it goes off of an invoice ID, which would refer to the order that's been placed, customer name, their bill, and the status of where it currently is. As you can see, we have some that have been delivered, some are shipping currently, and the rest are in processing. Now for other controls, as you can see on the left side, the admin has the customer list. And if you remember from our use case, the admin has the ability to see the entire list of customers that have an account on our site, as well as the ability to edit and delete their information if necessary. And the vendor list operates very much the same way, a very high level look at everyone that has products available, and we can make edits or deletions as necessary to see fit. Product list is the next one. It works very much like the vendor product list does, but the main difference is that because we are an administrator, we have the ability to edit or delete products of any vendor. It's not solely restricted to a particular login. And lastly, we have the invoice list. Okay. And this is another table that looks at all of the invoices and the order status, as well as the date they were ordered. And as you can see here, we also have a list of the credit card information, but for safety and security's sake, the last 4 digits are the only ones that remain. And as always, we also have the edit and delete functionality. Like, let's say a customer decided that they didn't want to have their order, then we would delete it. Or maybe they wanted to change how much they wanted for their order, then we would have the ability to edit it as well. And as you can see from the header, the admin has the all-seeing eye for his page, and that is his home page. And you'll also notice that although he does have a profile icon, it is not an editable field or link because the admin should not be edited at any time. Okay.
Okay, so that completes the look at our demo. Now we'll go into some of the design patterns and overall high-level architecture we used when creating this.
The first design pattern we're going to talk about is the factory. And the factory design pattern, as it states, is where we create objects without identifying the specific classes to be created. And in our case, we used the DAO, which is the Data Access Object Factory. And the reason why is because we can abstract and encapsulate access to the data source. Now, the reason we do this is because stored data, in our case, was done with SQL, but in the real world, that isn't always the case. Sometimes data can be on a different type of storage, or it could be a completely different relational database, and because of that, they have different ways of communicating. This is a code snippet that we have of our Congo DAO factory, and what this shows, as you can see the circled spot, that refers to the different factories that we could access. And as you can see, the very top one is my SQL DAO factory. The other 2 were ones that we put in place as an example of other factories. And at the very bottom, we have a method here that selects which factory to go off of. And as a default, we have my SQL DAO factory.
Right, so we also used a service locator design pattern. It's used to abstract JNDI lookups needed to create the session bean objects and also our data sources and message context in our application. Basically, JNDI is a Java naming directory interface, and it's like a big directory of all the resources that we're using. So we use a service locator to abstract that out a little bit, and it will do all the dirty work of going in and finding those resources and pulling them out for us. It also is caching the EJB home and data source objects so that once they're created the first time, they do not have to be again. And then the facade, or our business delegate in this case, is used to hide the underlying implementation details by creating a simple interface. It's basically reducing the coupling between our client and business services. So if, for example, the business logic needed to be changed out or how it was being done, the client-facing side, the web side of it would never need to know about any of these changes because the business delegate sits in between and would go ahead and intercept any of those calls and treat them as necessary. There's a little picture basically describing that. This would be our client here. They'd be on the website side of things. Package 1, package 2 out there would be our business logic, and then the facade sitting in between. So like I said, even if something from those packages changed, as long as the facade knows about those changes, the client never needs to know anything about it.
Okay, next we'll go over just kind of the high level look at our architecture. So we use a multi-tier architecture or N-tier architecture. This is a client-server architecture that emphasizes the separation of processes. So basically what that means is we separate into 3 different main components. We've got the presentation layer, the business logic, and the data server. Benefit of this is that when we're working on it, somebody could be working on the presentation layer, the business logic, as well as the data server. We can work on them independently, knowing very little about what the other is doing. But still, once we combine them, they should be able to plug in pretty nicely. Also, it helps to separate responsibilities when building and maintaining. It also helps to isolate problems if you have one. We use this for the database, like we said before, we could change out databases if we wanted to, as well as the JSP pages. We created so the presentation layer, you're able to insert a new JSP, change the direction of one, as well as change maybe the property file structure, and it should be easily done by using the multi-tier architecture. So we'll give you kind of a look at the flow of information if you want to go to the next slide. So this is like the overall look at the flow of information we use. We'll go through one use case. Let's say somebody wanted to edit the information. They would be at the JSP page. They would click the edit the information after they filled out the form. The form then gets sent to the servlet controller. Servlet controller takes that request, gets out the information it needs from it, and points it in the right direction. Servlet controller will use the delegate. The delegate will then use a service locator to get an object, an EJB object, and use that bean. We'll get the bean. The bean will then go to the DAO level, which is the data access object, where it talks to the database. And then we'd have a final one here where it would be the database, where it would retrieve or set the information for the updated account. And then we would send a status all the way back up to the servlet controller. Once we're there, it'll say, oh, was it successful? Was it unsuccessful? Then we go to the view resolver. View resolver just basically points to all of the JSP pages so it knows where to go, and then we'll direct them back to the screen with an alert that says it was successful. And all this flow of information, if you want to go back quick, is used and assisted by the data transfer object. This is like a customer object, a product object, and that's used to move the information back and forth.
I didn't touch it. I don't know what this is doing. It's trying to shut down your share. Probably installing up there.
We start, I think,
Since I was trying to.
Okay. Well, last thing we were going to show you, looks like we'll be unable to do it, was we were just going to load up a message beam listener. We're going to emphasize the asynchronous of the JMS messaging. How, because like every time we had done an invoice, we would have sent a message to a queue. Basically, that was like a shipping queue, so it would have said to the shipping yard or warehouse, I guess nowadays, to say, here's some items we need to add to the, or we need to ship out, as well as
when we filled out the contact form, that also sent a message to the queue. The one other thing we were going to mention too was how our database was laid out and how we connect to the database. We use a connection manager to do that. And basically what the connection manager does is it uses the service locator, provides the service locator with the JNDI name of the data source. The locator will get that data source back to the connection manager. Once the connection manager has a hold of that data source, it'll keep it for the life cycle of the program. And then anytime anything from our DAO level requests a connection, it will ask the connection manager for it. It will give it a connection from that data source. It'll complete a query or execute an update in the database, and then when we go to close that connection, it'll ask the connection manager to close it, so it'll put it back in the pool of connections. And then our database had 6 tables, 5 of which were our entity classes, or the data transfer objects. Customer, invoice, product, vendor, and admin. So we had kind of like a one-to-many relationship between vendors and products, because each vendor can have many products, but each product only belongs to one vendor. Even if you may have noticed during the presentation there were duplicates of a couple products in that database. Basically what that meant was there were multiple vendors selling the same product, but we wanted to keep them as completely separate things because the vendor may have different quantities or different prices for those products.
Okay, that was our presentation. Thanks for listening to it. You guys have any questions about our application at all?
Yeah, I do. Can you talk a little bit, I'm sorry, can you talk a little bit about the searching and how that works? Can I type it, does it do relevance-based searching, or is it just like plain text searching?
It's plain text, it's just pattern matching to anything within that table.
Okay, so is it, so you can like type in star, if I was to type in cider, would it, you know, would it search a number of different fields or just like?
It would search all the fields for anything listing cider.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about like the, how you did the sorting? So on the page with all the products, right, you list them all on the table, you had the ability to sort. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was actually done using a Bootstrap library called Data Tables. It's a combination of Bootstrap and jQuery. I did not look at the underlying code very closely.
Sure.
It was a minified version, so it wasn't very easy to.
And so did you load, so how did the data get loaded into the table itself? Was it done kind of more server side, client side? Do you
Yep. So what we did is we went down to the database to get the information. So each one, the request was sent to go to this page. First we set up the servlet. The servlet then makes the call to the database. We retrieve all the information from the products that was stored there, and that's how we use it to display. A couple of things we used displaying using Ajax. One was like the carousel. At the beginning we used Ajax, so we wouldn't have to refresh the page. As well as I believe the reports for the administrator, we also used Ajax to retrieve that information as well.
I think coming
The actual
to your,
products.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry to interrupt. So coming to your point, I think it happens on the client side.
The images that you guys, we can upload, where do you store it? Do you store it in the database?
Store what?
The images?
Yeah, the images are currently being stored in the database as a blob object. There's an image servlet that will request, like on the page, you'll request an image from the image servlet. It will go down to the database and get that. It also has a cache within that servlet, so once it retrieves the image for the first time, it'll store it in a hash map cache. And so on, next time it needs that image, it'll just pull it out of the cache instead.
Okay, and then assuming that something goes wrong in your application,
Yes.
do you have an error page or anything on that
Yeah,
side?
we do. We have a few different error pages. If somebody were to type in a URL that didn't exist, we have a custom 404 page that'll pop up.
We have an SQL error page as well. If we got a leak with the database, we'll get a different kind of error to appear, as well as just like a default error as well.
Okay, and then for your username and password, where do you store that?
We store that in the database. If like a customer will save it in the customer table in the database, the vendor in the vendor, and the admin in the admin. We just save those as text fields there.
Yeah.
Even the password?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
we-
something we would.
Password encryption is
Time
something.
constraints didn't allow us to.
Yeah. One of the last slides is like improvements we'd like to make if we had more time, more than 3 weeks to work on it. And that was definitely one of them is password encryption. We understand that's important.
Got it. One last question for me is your decision making and why did you have 3 separate options for like a vendor, customer, and admin? Why didn't you go with just the login and then based on the login, depending on the type of user, you could have given them a different view?
We do use like the same page for that. We use a lot of the same code. So like the JSP, it's the exact same JSP. We just fill in whether it's customer, they click on it. So we did understand they're very similar things and we could try to combine them. So we use the same JSPs, but we do.
I think what the
different
decision
tabs.
kind of came down to is we were talking about it and we wanted people to be able to, like, we didn't want, like if a customer and vendor had the same username or
Oh,
wanted the same username, we decided that we would let them do that. So we would have separate logins for them.
Got it. And the way you display the different, assuming that an admin versus the vendor versus the customer?
That's mostly done in JSTL.
Okay.
We check who you're logged in as and then display different information on the page
Oh,
based
awesome.
on that.
Okay, thanks.
Couple of questions. Kevin, you showed like an admin tool that listed the inventory by each vendor. If we had a change in requirement where we needed to group the section by each vendor and show subtotals of inventory by vendor, can you just talk us through how you might make that type of change?
That would probably be done using another stored procedure, mainly from the one that you were talking about. That was a combination of joining both the vendor and the product tables, because when a product is created, the foreign key is the vendor ID in this case. So I was playing around with different ideas of how to display that information, and I couldn't come up with a very elegant solution on how to have it display each vendor and then products and subtotals correctly, but that would be something that I would also implement too.
Someone mentioned a message queue. Can you just tell us what, that was for the comments, I think. Can you just tell us sort of the purpose of that and what you would use that technology for?
Yeah, we set up the messaging queue so that if somebody has a comment or suggestion or needs support, they can fill that out, and then it's the main purpose is asynchronously sent, so we don't have to worry about like having systems hooked up real time. If something on our back end is currently under maintenance or down, as soon as it pops back up, we'll get all those messages and then can respond to them.
Okay, great, thanks. And one for Nick. Let's say we had a requirement to add a new column to the list of beers, so, I don't know, Seth's preference or something.
Okay, sure.
And I said, let's add that to the system. You don't have that information.
Sure.
Talk to me through a couple of different things you have to
Okay,
do.
sure. First thing we want to do is in the database level, we'll have to add a new column for that, where we want to store it. Maybe if it's preference, maybe it's like, thinking like a star, maybe favorite, they're allowed to favorite it. So it'd be a yes or no, whether it's a starred item or not a starred item. So we can store that in the database. And then when we retrieve it, we could just check using JSTL tag libraries we're using on the JSP page. We'll check whether it is preferred or whether it's not preferred, and then show the star or don't show the star for that. So yeah, I think that would be how we go about accomplishing that.
Awesome, thanks. Great job, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
One, I'll tag along with Seth's question,
Okay.
the last one. Assuming that you said you'll add a new column, assume that I tell you not to add a new column and still achieve it. Can you do
Okay.
that?
To not add a new column to the database or to the display?
To the database. I still want to add a new column to the table there. I know it's not the best design pattern. I'm not
Yeah.
following any design patterns, but tell me an innovative way of how I can still display that new column that Seth suggested without adding a new column to the database.
Okay.
I mean, it's a question for either one of you.
Yeah.
Is it okay?
One way we could do that is when the user first logs in, give them a cookie, save that information within the cookie, and then display that on the table based on what information is within that cookie.
So I have a question. So you guys talked about DAOs and accessing the database and updating information. Can you give me an example of any custom query that you had to write? Maybe you had to join two tables? Or...
Yeah. So I think the best example of that would be Kevin's, if he wants to talk through when he used some join functions to present those reports.
Yeah, absolutely. The main side of the administrative login, those were all stored procedures, and majority of them all use joins. Kind of like what was mentioned earlier about having the vendor and the products all listed. That was a join of two tables, as well as the carousel that we saw for every login, as well as just the home page. That also displayed different stored procedures to showcase the featured beer or the most recently added, the top sellers.
What is I'm assuming there's an interface for the data access object?
Yeah.
What were some of the methods that you included for that?
We had basic CRUD operations, create, update, delete. Yeah, there we go. And then we also had a few for retrieving just an image. We had one for validating user information such as username and password.
Yeah. Just a lot of things like getting by ID, getting the customer, having the ID, being able to return the customer, things like that. If we have the thing up, we could show you the code actually, what we had on our interface, but unfortunately it's not working.
The validation messages that you had, were those all on your client side, or did you also have them in your server side, in your business side?
There were messages that were set on the server side and then accessed on the client side via Bootstrap and popped up with a modal.
Did you have any JavaScript messages?
Yeah, we did use the JavaScript to show the modal, and then we had on our JSP page, we used Bootstrap, we had the modal set to display.
So yeah, my question is kind of similar. So on the page when you had like basically the password requirements, so let's say that like I'm a customer and I come in and my JavaScript is disabled. So what were to happen if
That's something that's not implemented right now. We do
Okay.
need to do server-side validation on that still.
Gotcha.
That's only currently JavaScript validation.
sounds like you know about it though, so.
So if I wanted to change the entire look and feel of the site, right? Bootstrap is great.
Yep.
Because it gives you glyph cons and a number of components that just come out of the box. But if I just wanted to, since it seems like a majority of the site was outlined in Bootstrap, I just wanted to make, change the color of all the buttons or, that sort of thing. Can you kind of talk us through that process?
Yeah, we also, after all of our Bootstrap stuff is loaded, we have our own custom style sheet that's loaded very last, so it'll override anything else that's done by Bootstrap, and we can go in if we want to change the button colors, we could go change, I think it's BTN is button, and BTN-success would be like the field that we would have to change, and we could, most of ours were success buttons, the green ones. If we were to define a new color within that, it would get overwritten by our custom style sheet and display to the end user.
And also if we wanted to maybe add a new page, a new feature, using the view resolver, which makes it easy, because we can just plug it in, we just change it in that one location, not going to have to change it in all the different servlets and where they point to the JSP. So we also make it easy to add new pages.
And going back to the data access object interface, right? So did you start with basic CRUD operations and then over time realize, oh, I need to add new methods
Yeah,
to the
that's-
interface? So kind of when you added new methods to the interface, you had to go and probably update a number of other classes as a result of that. Did you find that to be challenging? I imagine that, like, if you went through the process of fully, changes are incorporated over time, but as a result of requirements changing, or you realizing that you were missing something. But kind of talk us through the process of, defining the interface, making updates to it, having to update the associated data access objects.
Yeah, when we want to add something, a new feature like that to it, we would have to go step by step and change in the different layers. Started with the controller, then the delegate, and then the bean, and then the DAO. You have to make changes throughout all of those.
I wouldn't really say it was difficult, more tedious,
Yeah.
making sure you don't miss anything
And
and
get used to the
go very
process.
step by step through each one, make sure you catch it all.
And the framework looks a lot like Spring. Do you use like an out-of-the-box with Spring or some other framework? The
Well,
MVC?
We didn't use any framework like where we used the Spring Eclipse tool, but we didn't use a framework. We based it off of that, but we didn't use that to use.
Right, we have some EJB beans and whatnot, but
Yeah.
nothing spring related.
Mhm.
One last question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So can you quickly talk through the process of how you guys came up with the concept of developing the requirements and design for this application? Like,
Sure.
talk through the process.
Yeah, I mean, first off, our task was to create a shopping cart, so we decided what we wanted to sell. And then mostly it was looking at what we wanted to do, what was the main, first step, saying what we wanted to do. And then from there, you're saying the JSP level, like the presentation layer, the business logic, the kind of things we're gonna need. So we tried to do as much preparation before we started setting it up, arranging it, for how we're gonna
We
do
laid
it.
out pretty much what we wanted information-wise in our database before we
Mhm.
started.
Yep, we had that set as a first step.
The relationships between the tables, all of that,
Yeah, you-
and then from there we just tried to implement a lot of the things that we've been learning over the class, all the different design patterns we've learned, and using multi-tiered architecture to separate concerns from different levels.
But since we were learning, well, it was like a training, it was still
Yeah.
kind of learn as you go, where you learn something new and say, we want to incorporate that in our project, so then we would try to adjust it to.
There was a lot of refactoring
Yeah.
when we would.
Yeah, a quick design question. So I noticed when you're a customer and you're going to get or purchase beer, so when you would come in, you would add it to your cart, and then you can no longer add it to your cart, and then you'd go to the next page and you'd view your cart. You could see what was there, and it would just be one item. And then finally, not until you got to the checkout page, you could change the quantity. So could you just
Right.
run me through, whether it be business or technical, why you decided to basically wait until the customer checks out to modify the quantity?
I think technically it was a little easier to do it that way, and it's just kind of what we went with. You're right, it's probably not the most intuitive for the customer. We probably in the future would want to change that to alert them when it pops up, hey, if you want more than one, you can change that at checkout.
Yeah, we were gonna make just an information text on top saying you can change the quantity to text or at the checkout. Fortunately, we weren't able to implement that, but that is something we did talk about.
Yes.